that their loved ones have.
Inside of this club still for your agents and the FBI and the people investigating this crime, is there still
No, the scene is clear, but like especially Hopper said, there's a lot of victims inside, trying to be respectful of that as well, and it's just gonna take time. We ask that people have patience.
the shooters are taking right now or yesterday?
The subject that I mentioned earlier was not under current investigation at the time of this incident and was not under
Can you
surveillance.
tell us what his family, you guys have interviewed his family, I assume. Is there anything you can tell us about those interviews?
All I can tell you is that multiple interviews are being conducted as we speak. I have no details as to how far that's gone at this point in time.
You guys are at his home. Can you tell us what you're doing at the home?
Interviews and investigation, yes, sir.
We're going to take 2 more questions.
Any word on where he got the weapons from? Has ATF been able to trace them yet?
Is ATF here? Yes, our partners from ATF are here to speak to that.
Hi, good day. I'm Trevor Vellon. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of ATF. And first, I'd like to start by saying that our condolence goes out to the family of those who've been impacted.
June 12th, 2016. At least 50 dead, possibly another 50 injured in Orlando, Florida, at a gay nightclub early this morning.
And thus far, we're following up on that, so I'm not going to get into the detail as to the specific location of the purchase, but he did purchase 2 firearms, a handgun, and a long gun within the last few days.
What was the suspect wearing?
That's all the information we can release at this time. We'll provide you more updates as they become available. Thank you.
How long next ticket notifications is going to take?
We're doing it as quickly as possible.
Is there going to be security updated at different clubs now, especially in the
We don't think there's any threats right now, so.
As you see there, the conclusion of the latest update from not only law enforcement personnel, which includes the FBI, the lead on this investigation, but also the governor of Florida, Rick Scott. Some details that have come out that we did not know at the top of this hour include, of course, that the crime scene investigation at this hour is secure. However, there are still individuals' bodies still inside. They're working, as you can imagine, diligently to identify those who were killed in this massacre. We're learning more as well about the man authorities say carried out this act. I want to bring in immediately Pete Williams, our legal investigator correspondent here at MSNBC and NBC News. Pete, we now know, as you've reported, the FBI confirming this individual was questioned at least 2 times, 2013, 2014. One of those incidents came after colleagues noted comments that he made. In 2014, he claimed, according to the FBI, allegiance to Abdul Salah, a man, a 22-year-old from Florida who blew himself up in 2014 in a terror attack on the Syrian government forces.
Not so much as I understood them to say that he expressed allegiance for, but you're right, Tamron, this is a little meat on the bones of what we had been told earlier, that there were sort of 2 aspects to their earlier interest in him. One was that he was sort of in the orbit of people they were interested in, or on the periphery of it. We now know that that was Moner Mohammed Abu Salah, someone who is from the same place where the gunman in Orlando, the police say, did the shooting. Mateen is from Fort Pierce, Florida. Now, he's from New York originally, but he was living in Fort Pierce. This man, Moner Mohammed Abu Salah, was from that area, had, unknown to law enforcement at the time, gone to Syria, gotten some training, come back to Florida, where officials say he tried to recruit people, and then he went back to Syria, and he was responsible for a suicide bombing in 2014. What the FBI says is that in 2014 they were aware that he had had some contact with Abu Salah. They looked at it and decided, as they said, that the contact was minimal and that did not constitute a threat. The earlier thing was 2013. People who worked with him say that he had made inflammatory comments to his co-workers. So the FBI actually interviewed him a total of 3 times after all these things. And as you heard the FBI special agent in charge down there say, they decided there was nothing basically to any of these things, and they closed the investigation on him. So that was a very interesting piece of information. And then the ATF just saying that he bought apparently these 2 weapons that were used in the shooting just within the past week or so that he purchased them legally. Now, he didn't actually say that they were the weapons used in the shooting. He said that he bought a handgun and a long gun, but in fact, that's what was used in the shooting, was a handgun and an AR-15 style assault rifle, which would be, in law enforcement parlance, a long gun. And then, of course, they also confirmed what we had heard earlier, which is that he made this 911 call and stated some kind of allegiance to the Islamic State, to al-Baghdadi. And we're told he also mentioned the 2013 marathon bombings in Boston and said something about the Tsarnaev brothers, Johar and Tamerlan Tsarnaev, who were responsible for that bombing.
Let me bring in, thank you, Pete, Sean Henry, former Executive Assistant Director for the FBI, current Chief Security Officer with CrowdStrike. Sean, we're working to confirm information of where this shooter worked. He was a security officer. We do not know where. There are reports that it could have been with a global security agency. Nevertheless, you heard the question there. If this individual was questioned 3 times, how was he able to have, and granted these were inconclusive, he was not charged, clearly he wasn't detained, but it was serious enough on multiple occasions that he was questioned by authorities and yet still was able to legally purchase this firearm. Clearly we know the law. There are laws in place here to protect people who are falsely accused, or maybe some colleague misunderstood. But that's a big question out here now. If he was a security officer, particularly with a global agency, and he acquired these weapons.
I think that is going to be a question, and is going to be looked at here post this incident on how that was able to occur. I can tell you that the law is the law, as you just said, Tamarin, and if the FBI or Omar abided by the law, there was nothing in place to preclude him from doing this. Clearly, that's something that's going to be looked at. But at this point in time, if that's the law, there's nothing that authorities could do. You know, the sharing of intelligence is critically important. I talk all the time about the JTTFs and the ability to share intelligence broadly in an effort to disrupt or prevent these types of attacks. Sometimes those are incredible challenges for law enforcement with the type of intelligence that they are able to get access to. And in this particular case, I think post this tragedy, there will be some looking at how, with the existing laws, he was able to obtain that weapon, Tamara.
Manny Gomez, let me bring you in, retired FBI Special Agent, Sergeant with the NYPD. After 9/11, we learned so much about information sharing from the federal level to the state level. We don't know if some cracks were involved here or not. That's early to state, but there are logical questions that can be asked with the basic information we have now.
Absolutely, and as Sean said, this is going to be looked at more closely. We have an investigation that occurred not once but twice. One of the allegations was that he might have been involved with a real bad guy, a bomber. And here he is. He has not only an active security guard license, but an active gun carry license. And I don't know what site he was working at in Florida, but it may have been a sensitive site on top of it all. So there are real questions that need to be addressed by agencies that give these gun licenses and these security guard licenses, and there has to be a better relationship between the federal and the local authorities regarding giving these licenses.
Let me bring in by phone now MSNBC terror analyst and Flashpoint's Leila Al-Khoury. Thank you so much, Leila, for joining us. Let's talk about where things stand right now. Act of terror, act of hate. Nevertheless, we know that in that building that we're looking at, 50 people lost their lives and 53 others are in the hospital right now. Help connect the dots on why it matters what this is called or how this is investigated.
Well, I think here are 2 points to make. One is we have to make clear that ISIS has not claimed official credit for this attack yet, although a media affiliated with ISIS said that a source told it that he was an Islamic State fighter. And here's the distinction. If he was indeed a fighter, that means he received training in ISIS camps, in ISIS ranks, in Iraq, Syria, or even Libya, and returned back to the United States to carry out this act. And if he was just an inspired person or a fighter or a radicalized individual who plays allegiance over 911, which he knows that the call will be recorded, then he might have planned this ahead by purchasing all these weapons and making it clear that he would have made his intentions of allegiance to ISIS by a 911 call. The other part of this is that he targeted what we call soft targets, and with high velocity weapons and a crowded space like this, in a matter of a couple of minutes, you can definitely take out dozens of people. I think that from the characteristics of this attack, it seems pretty much planned and intended to take place this way. The last part here is we're going to talk about whether this is related to the radical view about gays in ISIS ideology. It seemed to have been a primary target, not only that it was a soft target, not only it was American civilians, but it was also individuals who ISIS deems as subhumans and demonizes in its own propaganda in its own territory and throws off of the roof of buildings or stones to death with rocks. And so while the investigation is still unfolding, we're hearing now that more and more that this individual might have been at least inspired by ISIS.
When you discuss, and we were just on with a writer from the Orlando area who writes for an LGBT paper, knows this area, knows this club very well. Obviously, there's always a concern in this country as it relates to hate crime, whether it's Mother Emanuel in South Carolina or this act that happened here this morning. But as you pointed out, with ISIS, with some of the radicalized views associated with that organization and others, the view of gays being subhuman, being less than an animal in some cases, does that, or have you seen an uptick or heard an uptick in the call to attack gays in the United States, homosexuals around the world?
There hasn't really been an uptick in calls for attack on gays in the West or anything to that effect that's coming out of, let's say, ISIS central media. However, ideological pamphlets and documents are regularly circulating on ISIS web forums and ISIS chat rooms that specifically talk about that. And, there has been, what we call religious creeds or fatwas released by ISIS that exactly says what the punishment of the so-called crime of homosexuality is. And for them, it's actually, they say that even if an individual is raped, it's better for him to be killed than live with the shame of having engaged in a homosexual act. And so all of these are regularly circulated among jihadists. And if you want to be a true ISIS supporter or a true supporter of Al-Qaeda, these views are essentially commonplace, solid views.
Latham Hoorie, thank you so much, MSNBC terror analyst. And NBC News coverage will continue tonight with Lester Holt on NBC Lightning News from Orlando, and our coverage will continue on MSNBC.